Welcome to Worldview Matters, discussing controversial issues, discerning current events, defending biblical Christianity. No topic off limits. And now, here's your host, David Fiorazzo.
Friends, fasten your seatbelts for another one of these shows. We're going to talk about demonic agendas against God, children, and parental rights. And it's right in our government-run schools. Under our noses, what's happening you may not believe. Because we've got back with us Erin Lee. She co-founded Protect Kids Colorado. And that website is protectkidscolorado.org. Also, stopgenderideology.com. She was a part of Art Club movie. And also, there's a Facebook page, Erin, E-R-I-N, for parental rights. Erin for parental rights. There it is. And we'll talk to her a little bit about that. We did a show with her back in February of this year when we found out what happened to her. Her 6th grade daughter was recruited by an after-school sex club, and then the LGBTQ, the transgender ideology was. I'll let you share. I'll let her share her story. Erin Lee, welcome back. Want to let you talk and not me. Go. Great to see you again. First of all, thank you for your time. Before we get an update on what you're doing now, for those that we've got a lot of newer viewers and listeners, so they didn't hear your story, I encourage you, friends, to go look up this other one that when we did a show with Erin in February 29 on Worldview Matters, your 6th grade daughter. So I know you can bullet point it and condense it at this point. Tell people what happened, and then we'll get an update on what you're doing now.
Yeah. So 2021, which remind everyone that's the height of COVID. We just moved to a new town. My daughter's a very shy kid, just turned 12, and her art teacher asked her to stay after school for art club. When she gets there, it's actually Gender and Sexuality Awareness Club, or GSA, formerly the Gay Straight Alliance. And the teachers invited in an outside predator, an absolute predator, who runs an organization called Skittles for kids 2 to 10 and Splash for kids 11 and up to talk about gender and sex, who tells the kids if you're not fully comfortable in your biological sex or your body, that means you're trans. And of course, my daughter identified with that. She's 12. She's not making any friends with kids her age. She's awkward. And so they gave her toys to correspond with her new label. They told her queer is when you're not sure who you're sexually attracted to. So she was also queer. Coming out of that club, they talked about things like polyamory, how to get puberty blockers without telling your parents, how to see a therapist in the state of Colorado without telling parents, which is legal here in this state. They reiterated constantly that parents might not be safe, that it's okay to lie to your parents about where you are. In fact, as my daughter left the room, her teacher pulled her aside, and the last thing she said to her was, "Remember, you don't have to tell your parents."
Wow.
And we're lucky she told us, but 12-year-old girls especially, and I should backtrack and say at the time we were not strong Christians. My husband had no faith in his life. At that time, we were not raising our daughter to know God made male and female. You can't change that, and not to try to find her identity in the world. And she was just so easily captured. And we learned that they had been planting seeds, the school district, for years with pronoun conversation and rooming boys with the girls in 5th grade overnight camping week, and just really making this normal to her so that when this predator came in and said, if you're not comfortable in your body, you're a transgender boy, she latched on. And it was a long, dark road to save her from that stranglehold.
And this is happening around the country. It's not just Colorado. You happen to wake up and do something about it. Thank God, Erin. We need more people like you that are fighting this ideology and this demonic agenda. It makes me wonder. I think a lot of viewers are wondering, I wonder how many children do not tell their parents. And then until it's too late when they don't tell their parents, and then they find out when they see some sort of transition going on with their kids that they had no idea about.
Well, there's this encouragement to keep it a secret from parents, teachers, counselors, administrators. They're encouraged. Some districts even have policy. The state of California is now, the attorney general is fighting so that no school can have a policy that tells parents if their child is identifying as the opposite sex at school. And so teachers are encouraged to keep it a secret. But when we went public about a year after the incident, and that's how long it took us to save our girl. I
Oh,
mean, it dark. She was confused. Therapy made it worse because of laws here in Colorado that require them to affirm the confusion. And she became suicidal about 6 months after the incident. So it took a long time to get her out, and we have. She's on the other side. She's thriving outside of the public school, 3 years later. But when we went public, families just came out of the woodworks from that class, even that my daughter was in, that club, whose children did not tell them this was happening. And that, to me, has been the most heartbreaking part of all of this, is all of the families who have come forward to me and said, me too, me too. And
oh.
of them didn't know, but I would venture to say hundreds of thousands of children in this country are confused over their sex, and their parents are in the dark about it.
Yeah, and it's a purposeful agenda. It is demonic, friends. We've got to see the spiritual forces of darkness behind all this. It's driving this, and it's just manifesting in the public schools. Hollywood's on board, Democrat Party. In fact, I don't want to run out of time before we talk about this. Over on your Facebook page, Erin for Parental Rights, yesterday, recently, because this is going to air at a different time, you posted something about the man running for VP with Kamala Harris. And you say, since the issues of medicalizing gender-confused children, attacking parents who don't go along with it, and public education never come up in debates, this is your reminder that if you don't agree to give your child puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and cut off their healthy body parts when they ask for it, Tim Walz signed a law to forcibly take your child away. And he also promotes secretly transitioning your kids at school, which we know is going on. So you probably won't even know your child is struggling until it's too late. Okay, let's talk briefly about that bill that's over in Minnesota. Erin, you posted the link to the bill. It's right there. It's HF 146. This is a man that could be second in power in the United States, and people don't even know about this legislation. Go ahead.
Yeah. And it's not uncommon in a lot of states. I mean, and the bill is exactly what I explained it to be. If parents are not in agreement with medicalizing their child who's asking for it because of gender confusion, then the state reserves the right to remove your child and medicalize them for you. Lieutenant Governor Peggy has gone on record saying it's hateful parenting not to listen to whatever your child says they are. So they're very clear. I like to call it toxic compassion. I mean, that's something that Walz, he comes off as this like goofy, likable, compassionate, and everything's from a place of compassion. Well, it's toxic, misplaced compassion.
Yes.
Because it is not loving nor compassionate to tell a child they were born wrong, to mutilate their healthy bodies, to exclude their loving parents, especially when they're suffering mental health distress. It's a really evil agenda, and he packages it with this goofy smile.
Yeah.
But it's definitely precedent in at least half of the states. We're very much a country divided, where the red states are passing policy to prevent this from happening, and the blue states are passing policy, like where I live in Colorado, to essentially erase parental rights and to push this agenda of medicalizing kids forward. And if we vote this man into the White House, rest assured, I mean, they're already proclaiming Trans Day on Easter Sunday. They're already inviting transgender people who go topless on the White House lawn. It's not going to get better, people, if we vote this man into office. That's the direction he'll take us.
I like a word you used, toxic. And I think we should start a new hashtag, Toxic Tim Walz. Maybe we can get that going on Worldview Matters. Anyway, friends on social media. So part of your story, or your story, as much as you were able to tell in Art Club Movie, it's available online, artclubmovie.com. Anything you want to share about that before we move on, Erin?
Yeah, this is something I'm really proud of. Colorado Senator Kevin Lundberg and I made this film. We raised about $10,000 and did everything ourselves. I'm certainly not a filmmaker, but it was great to be able to tell our story in our own words, because when you go public with something like our story, media pulls clips and you don't really get to tell your whole story. I think the most special part was my husband being included. I like to say I'm the mouthpiece. He's the brains. He's a quiet engineer, but he felt compelled to tell his story of how he processed what we went through and his coming to the Lord through all of this and realizing he had not been covering our kids and teaching them biblical knowledge and where they should be seeking their identity. And it's just really touching to see him tell it in his own words. And the ending of the film is our daughter. It's about a minute clip of her just giving her happy ending to this horror story in her own words. And it's free. We'll never charge for it. It's artclubmovie.com. We just released a shorter version that's only an hour and 15. So encourage people to watch and share, which is if it can happen to us, it can happen to anyone. And we really portray that in the movie.
Yes, it's free. Artclubmovie.com. A lot of people that are watching, their kids are out of school. We have a very vast mixed audience here. What would you share with them? Because they're concerned about this, but yet it doesn't directly affect them. And I'm thinking, if you love your neighbor, you will be concerned about what your neighbor's kids are going through down at the public school. Go ahead, Erin.
Well, it does affect all of us. There's a whole generation of kids who is being radicalized in our public schools to believe that if they're white, they're oppressors. And if they're not comfortable in their body, they're transgender. And, God is a bad word. And it absolutely affects all of us. It's the whole next generation of kids coming up, and we've got an obligation to care about them. But I'll say in this parental rights fight, grandparents have been at the forefront. Really, they've got time. I partner with an organization called Grandparents for Kids, which I encourage grandparents to get involved in. And her motto is get off the golf course and get to the school board, because your tax dollars pay the salaries of the people who are pushing these agendas on millions and millions of children. So you've just as much right and say to stand up and say, I'm not going to tolerate this with my tax dollars. But it does affect all of us, and certainly love your neighbor. But I'll also say it's happening to far more people than you think it is. It is a very pervasive issue. My district has said that 50% of kids in the district are LGBTQ. And I don't doubt that statistic based on how they're pushing this on kids and encouraging them to adopt these labels. There's just so many families who are going through it who either don't know it, as we discussed earlier, or who are afraid to talk about it. It's a controversial, polarizing issue, and it shouldn't be. And I think the most important thing any of us can do, no matter where we are in our lives, is just talk about it. Normalize conversation that there are only two genders. And yes, these things are happening in our public schools. We've got to just talk about it.
Yeah, amen. Thank you. By the way, friends, the other website, stopgenderideology.com. We're going to talk about Colorado when we come back. We're going to take an early pause here to shout out to one of our sponsors, but there's a website, protectkidscolorado.org. We'll be talking about also a good news story. Thanks to Alliance Defending Freedom. There's a teacher that refused to lie to his students and give into the pronoun game. We're going to talk about a positive outcome. More with Erin Lee on Worldview Matters in just a minute.
Today's show is brought to you by Harbinger's Daily, world news biblically understood. Stay informed at harbingersdaily.com.
Friends, thank you so much for sharing the podcast. I can't emphasize that enough. We are censored enough, and that helps us get out there when you actively share. And you can follow us on Rumble if you're not already on the Rumble channel. Please do that. Freedom Project. Also, free download the Freedom Project Media app for your iPhone. You can download that for free. So Erin Lee is our guest today. Many websites. The Facebook page, Erin for Parental Rights, stopgenderideology.com, artclubmovie.com, and let's talk about protectkidscolorado.org. Erin, you shared there's an update that you're not too thrilled about with this battle going on in Colorado. Go ahead and bring us up to speed on what's going on there.
Yeah, well, I'm in what I like to call California Plus. I think people know California's off the rails. People don't pay as much attention to Colorado, but we usually set the standard for what California does. So people should be paying attention to this state. And I actually, Lance Wallnow, some viewers may know, pastor out of Texas, brought this idea to us to run citizens ballot measures because we can't even play defense on bad bills in Colorado. I mean, the laws they are passing have affected my family in a very negative way and so many others. But we do have the right to citizens ballot initiative, and 27 states have this option where citizens can put forth legislation. We have to get so many signatures. Well, first we have to get through the Attorney General's title board process, which is a headache. Then we have to get so many signatures. Then it goes to the people to vote. And so we said on two very simple, middle of the ground issues, no boys and girls sports. And if you transition a child, the parents must be notified. We put those before the Attorney General and Secretary of State run title board. We filed 20 initiatives. They denied 17 of them, saying that the word parent was too confusing for Colorado voters.
Oh my goodness.
When we finally got the 3 through, we were then sued to the Colorado Supreme Court by Jared Polis's lawyer. That's our governor, our very liberal governor. And so our timeline went from 6 months to 2 months to gather those signatures. So we didn't make the ballot this time around, but the good news is that the numbers indicate if we had had our full amount of time, we would have had triple the amount of signatures we needed. And so we'll be back with these measures again in the next election cycle, and we'll continue to educate and empower parents in Colorado.
So we need to pause for a moment and repeat something, emphasize something. 2 ballot measures. Think about this. What would our great grandparents say? 1 measure, no boys and girls sports. Common sense? I don't know. What would they say? And the other one, parents have a right to be notified about
gender incongruence.
It should be anything.
Anything.
Who's raising the kids? If it's the parents, under God, if it's the parents' responsibility, the parents should be. Anyway, Erin, it's just really, to a lot of our viewers and listeners, this is astounding that we're having these conversations. So thank you for fighting and also for giving a little bit of information. This is a strategy to get these initiatives going early enough, to get enough signatures. And what did you say earlier? You said something about playing defense. What did you say earlier?
Said we can't even play defense in our legislature. Meaning when they're passing these horrible bills, we can't stop them. We can't get an amendment through on them. They're just full steam ahead with the socialist agenda, the godless socialist agenda. And we have a super minority in our House of Representatives here in Colorado. So they can't, there's nothing that can be done. And so we put it to the people, but to give an encouraging word to people. When we went out with these petitions, we had thousands of volunteers all over the state. People were shocked that this was necessary. Yeah. There was a lot of education that happened, like, what? That's a problem that's happening. But overwhelming majority of people, no matter where they lie on the political or religious spectrum, agree men aren't women and parents shouldn't be lied to. I mean, people were falling over each other to sign this petition. Like, please put this on the ballot. So it was really encouraging. I think there's a lot of negativity and a lot of defeat that happens on our side. But I was so encouraged by how we brought people together from every side on these issues to say, nope, there's only male and female, and we're going to stand by that.
Did you say 37 states they have some
27.
sort of 27 have some sort of ballot? It's interesting. That's somewhat encouraging, but you think about it, that's just over half the states in America, and you're going, geez, it just seems like a daunting battle and an uphill climb, but we are here for such a time as this. I'm so proud of you, sister, for doing this work. I mean, I know it can be tedious. I know it can be sometimes overwhelming and maybe discouraging, but you keep fighting. And if the average person, listening or watching right now would just say, okay, what can I do? First of all, help raise awareness about what Erin is doing and about what we're doing here on Worldview Matters. We're trying to, there's so many issues. We're just taking them one at a time, friends. The guests we have on here on Worldview Matters TV, we're just taking them one at a time. All the different issues, religious freedom, parental rights, education, what, the media is doing, media bias, government, deep state, all these different issues. There's so much going on. The pro-lifers being arrested, jailed, us being censored and shadow banned, things like that. These are battles that if you list them all like I just did, I'm tired just thinking about it. But It's one at a time, and we are here for this reason, I think, just to fight this madness. Erin, before we go on, you want to comment on anything I just shared or anything that's on your heart?
I will just say, prior to my family's experience, was a very non-controversial, shy, needed to be liked by everyone. As I said, I wasn't strong in my faith, and it was really scary to step out on a limb and be public about what happened to us. And the response was overwhelmingly negative, right? It was like, whoa. But for every hater, there was 4 wonderful people that God put in our path to support us and pray for us and lift us up. And I think people have just been gaslit and intimidated and made to believe that us doing our little part isn't going to make a difference, or that if you speak the truth, you're going to be lambasted for it. And I'm just here to debunk that it was scary. And now that I'm out on the limb, I would do it all over again every time.
You're out on the limb. I love it. I love it. Let's share some good news, Erin, and you put this on your Facebook page. A school board has to pay $575,000 to a teacher who was fired. Why? For not using transgender student pronouns. This is the West Point School Board. What state was that, Erin? Virginia?
It's Richmond, Virginia. Mm-hmm.
Virginia. Okay. So there's cases like this, and you go, all right, well, what about the rest of them? There are a lot of people that were fired or laid off, whatever, for these issues. And I would just encourage people to keep fighting. And we seek God's approval, not man's. And if we want man's approval, we want to keep our jobs, we want to keep quiet. That's between you and God. But this man, in this case, he refused to lie to his students. As you write, he refused to harm children, and he refused to capitulate to gender ideology. What else can you tell us about this case? He obviously said, no, I'm not going to play the pronoun game. What else can you tell us about this, Erin? This is Alliance Defending Freedom.
Yeah, ADF defended him. They settled for nearly $600,000, and the district has now changed their policy. And that's really what we're going for. None of us, I'm suing the school district. I don't expect to get money. I don't really care about that. But our aim is to set legal precedent and create case law and push back on these policies and these laws that they're hiding behind, that they think, oh no, we made it policy, so now the teacher has to go along with it. And this lawsuit proves otherwise. And there are lots of cases like this around the country. They don't get a lot of attention, like Jessica Tapia in California. And she founded Teachers Don't Lie, which is a law firm entirely dedicated to pro bono representing any teacher who stands up for God's truth. Teachers don't have to be afraid. I can think of 10 law firms just off the top of my head that would fall over themselves to represent a teacher who stood up for truth. So teachers don't need to be afraid. And I'll add to that, anyone in the public system should not be in the union. The teachers' unions are primarily the driving force of all of these agendas at the ground level in our districts. And teachers think they have to join the union and pay their dues. They don't. There's alternatives in every state. They're not pro-teacher. They're not pro-parent. They're not pro-student even. They're pro their agenda. So I encourage teachers to get out of the union and do the right thing. Don't be afraid.
Yes.
There are so many people who will step up to help you. I lost my career over this. My HR career is over, and that's fine. God closed that door, and then he opened 12 windows. So you don't have to be afraid.
You lost your career. I mean, I'm thinking, wow, for telling what happened to your daughter, you weren't lying, and for believing that boys aren't girls or girls aren't boys. Erin, we're just in an irrational period in history and in America, but the website is faith-freedom.com. Teachers Don't Lie, faith-freedom.com. But let's go back to the story of this case. The board, you mentioned, cleared the dismissal from his record for the teacher, which is great, and changed its policies, which you mentioned, but also elections have consequences, and that's what we really want to emphasize. We are weeks away from what's going to happen in the future of our country based on leadership at every level, local level, but the presidential ticket. And elections have consequences because in this case, these transgender policies were finalized by Republican Governor Glenn Youngkin's administration last year. And that's according to the Alliance Defending Freedom in their news release. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but big elections coming up. And I don't know, Erin, I sometimes get frustrated with the whole election process, but Christians must vote. I'll give you a final chance to just encourage people right now.
Yes, one of our big at Protect Kids, one of our big supporters is Truth and Liberty Coalition. And I encourage all Christians to follow them, pay attention to what they're doing. They put out voter guides of how to vote biblically that they send to every church. You are so right. And I know our mutual friends, the Archers, hit heavy on the church for not being more politically engaged. You know, when it comes to my issue of parents not being lied to and kids not being medically transitioned, that's biblical. That's moral. It's not a political issue. And so we have got to get out and vote biblically and morally, but at the grassroots level too. President's important, but as you mentioned, the school board, you know, in Colorado, we're a local rule state. They hold all the cards. They make all the decisions for the kids in their local district. So we've got to vote locally and step up. If there's no one running, find someone. Run yourself. It's parents who stepped up to school boards like Sonia Shaw in California that have turned things around. So we have got to step out in the public square. If I can do it, I promise you anyone can.
That's right. So Erin for Parental Rights on Facebook. And you've also got a personal Facebook page, but I encourage you to connect with Erin to keep up on what's going on. Why? Because as she alluded to earlier, what happens in Colorado doesn't stay in Colorado. Sadly, or California, or San Francisco, New York, these different the city states. But Erin, keep fighting the good fight of faith and for the kids and exposing the darkness. Tough work, but God has called us to this time in history, and we'll see what happens. But thank you again for what you're doing and for being with us today and giving us an update.
You got it. Thanks for having me.
All right. You're most welcome, Erin. All right. Erin Lee, guys, the other website we mentioned a few times, stopgenderideology.com. You can get information out there. I mean, Alex Newman talks a lot about these issues and continues to educate people. And we're running out of time, but it's getting close. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what God does with those of us trying to raise awareness and that have been pushing so hard this year to do this work and to try to encourage people to inform voters, Christians, Lord willing. But thanks for sharing again the podcast. Subscribe to our Rumble channel, and we appreciate your prayers, guys, so very much. God bless you, and as always, keep speaking the truth about things that matter. Thanks for watching.